Good morning and welcome to Cisilion Live. So Lee, 2 weeks ago, a handful of us were over in Amsterdam not for a stag do, for a tech conference, Cisco Live, and it was a really interesting session. Firstly, the first Cisco Live that I think had been run in person for 3 years due to the pandemic. It feels weird, we're still talking about pandemic. Almost, I think it is now 3 years since the first lockdown, but it was really great, and it was really great to pull together all the various tech leaders from organizations and partners across EMEA really to pull together. So we wanted just to share today what we saw was some of the real key news that came out. There was obviously a lot over the duration of the week, so we're going to just walk through with you today what we saw was key, how we think this may help your organization, certainly what makes us excited as a leading Cisco partner in the UK. And hear any questions that you have to say. So I think as we go through today, really welcome your feedback. Any comments that you've got, please put them into the chat, and we'll go from there. So Lee, you attended with me and our team. What really stood out for you? What was some of the key highlights from your perspective?
Well, firstly, it was just great being somewhere for a change. As you said, 3 years, and being at Cisco Live,
Long time.
First time in 3 years. I think for myself, it's the first big conference I've been to for a good 3 years. Shame it wasn't in the US, in Vegas or something like that. But it was a cold Amsterdam, but it wasn't too shabby. But it was a really good event. Probably a little bit smaller than previous years.
That made it good, right?
It was.
Nice.
It was much more personal. And you got to meet a lot of people. And part of these events is actually getting out and connecting with old colleagues, old people from other organisations, etc. But also then meeting new organisations, new potential partners, and understanding new technologies that are coming through, both from Cisco and other organisations. But it was the messaging was really strong. The day started, the week started off with a lot of interesting stats around the increase in connected devices. Obviously explosion. We've talked in the past about IoT and the explosions of those areas, but overall, about 55% increase in connected devices across the globe at the moment. There's a 44% increase in 5G adoption. They're predicting by 2025. But there's huge challenges these days around economy, the environment, and digital skills, which obviously we'll move on to.
And I think that's a really good point as well, isn't it? I think some of the data that Cisco shares, some of the stats that come from not necessarily from them themselves, but from IDC. Around spending, as you touched on, we're under increasing pressure. There's impending recessions that we're talking about. We've of course got world energy crisis. We've got wars, and it's really not you can look at the doom and gloom around things, and you look at all the layoffs that are going on around, including at Cisco, but some of the big tech giants that have really, I think, been as a result of a lot of the huge hiring that happened since COVID. But it was actually really great to see that the outlook from IDC around where they're seeing growth. And I think there were stats around between 4 and 9% around where they see spending within organisations actually growing. And I think that's obviously for us as a managed service provider and reseller is great news. But I think it's certainly something that we are seeing. If you're seeing that, again, we'd love to get your spend. Are you feeling spend is being cut, or are you seeing spend growing? But I think it was really positive actually to see tech is kind of where the innovation is right now.
Yeah, and I think the challenges that we're seeing in the economy, the environmental issues, etc., and the skills gaps is actually driving a lot more innovation within companies like Cisco and others, and that was very clear in the messaging that was coming through from Cisco. There's a lot of discussions around what they're doing today, but also what's coming along in the future. So areas, for example, around security, for example, massive push within Cisco around the security stack. There's always been a challenge around security with lots and lots of different vendors, lots of different ways of managing your security infrastructure across the estate, everything from the end client all the way through up to the cloud, across the network, etc. So Cisco are doing a lot of work about bringing that together and making security a much more seamless and simpler experience. They're always a real focus, obviously, on pushing and protecting end to end, but also looking around simplifying that security estate. They're bringing out the Cisco Security Cloud, bringing everything together as best as they can, based around platforms like the Meraki console, which is obviously a very simple to use platform, which a lot of organisations are invested very heavily in. So there's obviously a strong skills capability in that space. but then delivering an end-to-end experience. So expanding on actually something we've been working with Cisco with over the last 4 or 5 months around platforms like Cisco Secure Connect, which is bringing together the Meraki security platforms, Cisco Umbrella, and a few other areas to create an end-to-end managed SASE service to simplify that capability across the estate. And then bringing other vendors in here as well to give much better visibility of everything that's happening within your security environment. So if you know it's happening, you can action it. And if you know it's happening, it's got to be easy to action as well, which is what Cisco's bringing together.
I think that's really key, isn't it? And I think, it's great to see that from Cisco, because I think, they've had a bit of a hard time with reputation around security for years. And I think it's, they're, certainly for us, I think when we re-looked at Cisco in depth, I think it's, they're not what they were 2 or 3 years ago. And I think that simplifying and bringing together, I think, leveraging, they're really focused on the popularity of the Meraki UI. And I think, one of the kind of hidden announcements, if you like, that I think was really important is around the consistency they're bringing now into the management of all of their tools. So they're trying to create that consistency so that they don't look like lots of different sets of products, because I think one of the key challenges around security in particular, it's a really crowded space, right? It's the biggest spend every year on the CIO budget, every single year, certainly our biggest investment as we obviously make as an MSP. But it's complicated. There's 3,500 products out there. There's so many vendors, 50 different security categories. And actually, part of the reason that organizations spend so much money on security is because it's complex, right? And you can have more gaps in security by having, you can have more gaps by more products, because the approach of always having the very best product for every single thing, I think, is now recognized. And it's not just Cisco doing this, but I think they've really recognized that actually if you bring these things together and allow and recognize that there's other investments and other vendors in the mix, and actually having that really holistic view across the view actually makes a more efficient, cheaper and more secure environment. And I think it's fantastic to see them really bringing that together. I think certainly something we are extremely excited about.
And so the complexity causes issues, which is what they are bringing together now with Meraki, with Umbrella, SecureX as the platform to bring the data together and then present that back to you as the consumer of the data, and to be able to action and actually respond to those threats. So it's a really, really strong message.
Exactly. And I think when we talk about collaboration between the different vendors and recognizing, really it's about meeting customers where they are, rather than almost taking the Apple closed ecosystem approach, which I think Cisco have been guilty about. It's actually now recognizing that it is about meeting customers where they are and meeting partners where they are. And I think on collaboration, that's probably brings us to the next point. I think and whilst not really a big focus and a big announcement at Cisco Live, some of this news was prior to that and actually following that. But I think the collaboration areas at Cisco Live were probably the busiest, I think, and there was so much buzz in the room around the announcement which happened back in October around Cisco and Microsoft's partnership. And it's really interesting to see that, and we've covered this quite a lot in events before and blogs and things, but it really showed actually the importance of how that world has shifted, how the growth of Teams has really dominated, and actually been a bit of a burden, I think, for Cisco, is fair to say. And now, and for us as a partner that is one of the UK's leading Microsoft partners and leading Cisco partners, then actually for us this is fantastic, and for our clients it's phenomenal, because it means that they've got these investments in technology, really, really great. I mean, Cisco make incredible hardware, right? I mean, really, really fantastic hardware, premium devices, really great experience, consistent experience, and lots of organizations are struggling with what to do around that kind of shift to Teams. There's a big push in the business to do those things. And actually now the fact that they don't have to rip out all that kit, and you think about the disruption that causes of ripping out kit, and changing that kind of user experience, fit outs in offices, not to mention the waste of hardware, right, and chucking away on recycling hardware, to now be able to bring that together. So we saw, it was great to see. It was great to actually see it properly in the flesh. They had it at ISC the week before. It was a little bit clunky, but it's great to see that it's going to be released in March. Really excited. Lots of our customers already really keen to get on those kind of beta programs and stuff. So please reach out if you need to and talk to us about those things. I think the second part of that is actually about how your partners can help you. And without trying to make a plug here as well, I think one of the areas that Cisco need help with, and I think this is great, obviously for us, is that the Teams ecosystem is not just about, or the Microsoft ecosystem is not just about endpoints and devices. So actually, really understanding how those devices work across teams, and also recognizing that actually WebEx can still be a really important part of your organization. You haven't got to make that shift all in one go or at all. I think Cisco's big push, which is really exciting, now the only vendor that does this today, is allows you now to have a completely seamless environment in Teams, completely native, all the things that you love and feel about Teams, a completely native experience in WebEx without having to choose on the day. So there's no rebooting of devices. You literally can join a meeting in WebEx and then later on join a WebEx in Teams, and that experience is completely seamless. So from a user perspective and investment in hardware perspective, it's phenomenal. It's not surprising that stand was absolutely packed, right?
It was, yeah. And you get the benefit of the quality of the Cisco hardware, plus everything else that's built in that hardware. It's the analytics that they've got in there. So we'll talk about environmental later on, but you've got the capability to pull statistics around how your building's being used directly from within the WebEx devices. Plus, on top of that, behind that, you've got the Cisco ecosystem, the Cisco platforms that then support the connectivity, the user experience end to end. Because collaboration is only one part. We talk about hybrid work, which is bringing everything together at that point. So is the user able to connect correctly? Do they get the experience they expect? And it's not just that collaboration piece. It's yes, collaboration software is one part, but we already talked about security, but that's a very strong part of that. Yeah. The network is a very strong part. And then the workspace itself, how the office, everything, how does your building work? How do you bring people back into the building? So Cisco has that full ecosystem of platforms, both using third parties and within their own platforms, to then be able to deliver end-to-end to them. The other big part, which I mentioned is around on the collaboration space, is now with the Cisco WebEx Contact Center.
Oh, that's fantastic, well. Fantastic news.
It's something we've been waiting for since WebEx Contact Center came out. Cisco have a huge legacy in contact center solutions, from the old days of UCCX and UCCE, which is certainly UCCE is still a very relevant product.
Some of the largest contact centers in the world.
It is still huge. We're talking to customers at the moment. One customer about that at the moment. But bringing WebEx Contact Center out as a cloud-delivered contact center as a service, it's a strong, robust platform that up until now, while it would have been working with the Microsoft Teams environment, hasn't been authorized, certified. It is now certified. So for us, it is a huge, huge tick that we can now take that with confidence into our customers to deliver the best contact center solution that will work regardless of the back-end telephony platforms that the customer is using. We can now put that in there, integrate with the customer who's either using Microsoft Teams, obviously using Cisco WebEx calling or traditional Cisco CECM platforms, but outside of that, any other telephony platform, we can now integrate WebEx Contact Center to deliver the best contact center solution to your agents in the contact centers. So for us, it is a massive opportunity.
It's also, I think, been one of the biggest showstoppers for organizations that are making that shift.
Yes.
And they have that big investment in contact center. And actually the certification is really important because, whilst the solutions work, obviously the certification provides that kind of guarantee of support across the vendor space. Yeah. And whilst we actively work in both, we hold advanced specializations in both those things, the reassurance of the vendor alliance, when we talk about the partnerships and the way that Cisco are changing and the way they work is so powerful. So I think we'll see this for many organizations that want to make that leap to Cisco WebEx Contact Center, that have teams today and are looking to kind of move. It really kind of puts, a world-class contact center solution in their reach now, which it didn't before. So fantastic.
Yeah, indeed. Mentioned briefly about the hybrid work and about the user experience. And that probably leads on to the next big area, which was discussed at Cisco Live, was around full stack observability. It's a huge area. It's also an extremely complex area at the moment there's a number of organisations, number of companies providing observability tools. And Cisco is one of these with a couple of platforms that deliver elements of full stack observability. But they're not the easiest of platforms. No one's going to tell you AppDynamics is an easy platform to deploy into your environments to get that level of detail.
They give you data, but they don't give you the insights about what those things mean. Right?
Exactly. But they're very powerful. And ThousandEyes is exactly the same. Hugely brilliant platform, and actually from a platform very easy to deploy. But it's only one part of that story. So from Cisco's perspective, they're taking that complexity, the amount of data that's being generated. And there's a lot of talk about data overload. I've mentioned tool sprawl, friction between teams who are managing these environments, etc. To bring that together into a single full stack observability platform. This at the moment is not yet released. This is coming out later in 2023. So they were talking about but they did say it at Cisco Live, so everyone's aware. So it's coming out later this year. It's a combination of Cisco and third-party products coming into a single FSO platform, fully open platform, API-driven, providing true data-driven insights into what's happening within your environment. But also outside of your environment as well. So you get full visibility of what's happening with your users, within your applications, across your network, in your data center, and in other people's data centers as well. So you have a full, includes in the name, full stack observability. You know what's happening, which gives you the ability to then make actionable changes and respond to issues before they become a big issue.
And it's all about, at the end of the day, it's all about the client experience, right? And if we think about, that shift, and I know everyone talks about the shift to cloud, but it's real. And I think if you look at, traditionally in organizations when you're in the office and you might be using VPNs to access services and things, generally the issues were pointed around, your network, your applications. It was always DNS, right? It was always DNS. But actually, if you think about that shift, that massive shift to cloud now, and the fact that we live in a perimeterless world, then you might have users working at home. They might be connecting secure. They might be on open Wi-Fi. They might be just connected with a home broadband. And users will start complaining about the performance of applications. That could be internal applications. That could be Salesforce. That could be Teams, Office 365, Google, whatever it might be. And actually now with FSO, that ability to actually detect things. I mean, if we think about the Azure AD outage, which tends to be one once a year, right? But what was really interesting with that one is it wasn't actually an issue with the services. It was actually the Azure network that delivers those things. And of course, as a result of that, it only affected certain regions, certain organizations, certain people, and in fact, big global organizations that have got multi-tenant environments. Some witnessed issues, some didn't. That's a really hard thing to diagnose, right? You kind of see an alert, you log a ticket with the vendor, but actually to be able to really see in real time a potential impact that is coming and to see it getting worse and be able to pre-notify users, but think about customers as well. Be able actually to pre-notify customers of an impending issue that we expect to happen before it happens, and then to empower those contact center, empower the contact center users to know in advance that when their users call up to log a ticket, whether that's internally or as a customer, say your website's really slow, to actually have that information at hand is absolutely so powerful, isn't it?
And that's what they're doing with this single platform, is trying to make it easier. So they're bringing out 7 or 8 actual use cases now based around AppDynamics and building out that full observability to make it easier to deploy, easier to actually start getting value from those investments. So a couple of actually really rung out to me. Talking about the outages for within Azure, for example, the other week, but one's around customer digital experience monitoring. So bringing together the observability, the network intelligence. So AppDynamics, for example, bringing in data from ThousandEyes, really ingesting valuable data from that platform real time, and then mapping that data from ThousandEyes into AppD with OpenTelemetry based network metrics, for example, to actually really understand what is that customer experience. The other element then is around business risk observability. We talked about security earlier as being one of the big key points from Cisco Live. This takes it and actually brings that data and brings that in with actually creates a business risk within the observability platform. So merging App Dynamics with Talos, with Talos being the big platform within Cisco, which is looking at all the threats.
The collective threat intelligence.
It's the threat intelligence, hunting across the globe, everything they see. And then Kenna as well as another platform, which is an acquisition Cisco made, I think, a couple of years ago.
We need to Google some of these terms.
Yeah, we can have other sessions later, and we haven't got time to go into detail. But bringing all that together to actually create a risk score for the organisation. So not just looking at the applications themselves, but where's the security risk around those applications and availability. So it's a big area, and it's one which is going to grow. And but Cisco making it an easy consumption model in the future. So.
Yeah, I think it's great, and I think when we also think about the join up, right? I think all the areas we talked about today, it's great to see these dots joining as well. And I think we think about that kind of business risk perspective. And I think it's a first, right? I think this is an industry first from Cisco. But also just linking that back to security as well. You can see, of course, exactly what applications people are using, what cloud services they're using as well. But that, of course, ties back into the security, right? And that single pane of glass around things like cloud access security brokers as well. So actually, what applications are people using? Why are they using them? Are you protecting your business and your business data about leaking into those kind of services? And of course, joining those dots up, and not all of that may get controlled within Cisco, but having the visibility to see that these things are happening, and then intelligently connect those APIs to your other tools you might be using for DLP and those kind of things, to ensure that actually you are protecting your intellectual property, your customer data, whatever else, of course, as well. So I think the great thing that we've seen, and hopefully you're seeing through today, is that these aren't isolated products anymore. These are suites of products that, whilst in their own rights are a suite, they're an integrated suite. And I think it's this is the first time I've really seen this from Cisco at all.
Yeah, and it's continued that simplification message, trying to make everything as simple as possible. Security, the observability, the management of your network, the data center, bringing all that together into a smaller number of platforms to manage everything, as simple to use platforms as possible as well, just so as an IT team you can actually get on and do what's important for your business, actually drive things forward.
And of course we talk about join up, right? And a lot of the stuff, it's easy to talk about new technology and new things, and you kind of go, okay, but I've got investment, I've got to replace things. But ESG was obviously a theme, and you can't escape it, right? And I think it's become something from, really, I think since the first COP conference a couple of years back, of it being a bit of noise and a nice to have, and certainly Cisco have had initiatives before around energy, right? So energy wise and those kind of things that were kind of almost put on pause. But I think ESG is such a critical component, and I think something again that was really great to see was not just new initiatives from Cisco, but actually the join up again across the portfolio, from security through to full stack, through to collaboration and smart buildings. And I know it's something you're extremely passionate about as well. But there's some really great programs as well around helping organizations to do more with less, right? So we talk about consolidation, but also just around how you refresh at a sustainable point without it necessarily costing you money. And I think that's a really important point. I know it's something you're quite passionate about.
Yeah, it's excuse me. There's a technology side to this. With Cisco bringing out Silicon One as their new silicon that the new switches, routers, and other hardware is running on. That from that perspective, it's way more efficient than the older silicon Cisco have been using. Obviously, Cisco produced their own silicon, which is unique in the industry, and because of that, they can control what they're putting into their products. So there's massive increase in efficiency in the new hardware coming through, which obviously drives down energy consumption. But because it's more efficient, you actually get a lot more for less. So the hardware is smaller power supplies, but it's also more performant. So you're getting better performance, smaller footprint, it's cheaper to manufacture, and less impactful to manufacture as well, because there's less raw materials going in to produce these devices because they're smaller, and also takes up less space within your data centers. It requires less feeding, less power, less cooling, etc., to keep those lights on. So that's at the front end, but also in the back end with Cisco, with the programs that they're running. We've got programs around green pay, which are better ways of actually paying for the technology. We've got Cisco refresh initiatives, trade-in programs, And where you do need other hardware, we can utilize reuse programs within Cisco as well to actually reuse older Cisco kit to drive and bring back into the environments older kit to reduce the impact of the disposal of the kit as well. And obviously, Cisco themselves will bring all hardware back, take out the raw materials, and repurpose that hardware where necessary as well to get to a point where Cisco are driving down their scope 1, 2, and through partners and yourselves, the scope 3 emissions as well. So, yeah, to give you an idea, based on the current initiatives Cisco have been going through at the moment, I think they cut their emissions for scope 1 and 2 by 39% since 2019. It's a huge reduction, and we're seeing that across the board. I think there's a stat. I haven't got the details to hand, but we in Europe we are driving ahead compared to the rest of the world in driving both scope 1 and 2 emissions down, but also as agenda items on boards. We as Europe, we are leading the rest of the world. So it's really pleasing to see that us as a community are making some big impacts in that.
I think it's great because it takes conversations away from just fees and fees as well. I think some of the things that we've seen and talked about today, and we'll cover it in more detail again, is that the join up, right? So when we think about how that all relates to operational expense, right, of knowing multiple tools and the training and the skills required, and we'll come on to that in a minute. Around those things, I think actually having the data and the insights to actually understand, how much power is something consuming, and refreshes often people often need to sweat the asset, right? Particularly when budgets do get squeezed and everyone's being encouraged to do. I don't quite like the more with less, but the more with the same, right? It's probably more fair. But really making sure that you're getting best value out of something. That doesn't necessarily mean sweating the asset, right? Because that's not always good. If you're sweating something and you're not getting the best out of it, actually, that's not good. But having those insights, and actually a lot of the tools that Cisco have released as well to actually help you understand, the cost benefit of and the environmental benefit, right, of actually replacing something that works but is quite old versus replacing something with fresh new silicon, the lower power, particularly with the energy bills at the moment. I mean, they're astronomical.
Indeed.
And I think we see a lot of organizations are called shifting, and whether that's big appliances into SaaS applications like WebEx, or whether that's around deploying Nexus switching fabric and stuff into the cloud. These are all great things that these vendors are doing to help you reduce your carbon emissions and to report on those, because you all have to report on them as well, right? So I think actually by sometimes picking the right technology and the right vendors, it's kind of a double win, right? It's kind of helping you to drive those things down.
The reporting thing is massive as well. So you can do as much as you can to reduce the emissions, but we all have a responsibility now as organisations to report on our consumption of energy. So Cisco are bringing through that reportability into the platforms. It's something they've been doing for a very long time. I can remember early days of EnergyWise and some of those platforms, which are probably a little bit before their time, if I'm being honest. But now,
before we cared about the environment,
we cared, but before I don't think they weren't ready. Whereas now they're bringing into even platforms like the WebEx Control Hub, they're bringing reporting on the energy consumption of your collaboration environment. Nexus Cloud will have reporting on the energy consumption of your Nexus fabrics. Intersight, etc. They're all bringing all this energy consumption reporting, so you are able to now get a true picture of what is the cost of energy, the cost of the environment of your IT estate, and that's huge. Bring into that how we can then use IT to influence everything else in the environment. So using IT to reduce your carbon consumption within the building, the fabric of the building, plus the indirect savings through collaboration platforms and hybrid working, and how that can reduce your indirect carbon emissions by reducing traveling and all that good stuff. We as a community have a massive part to play in driving an ESG agenda.
And we think about smart buildings, right? And I think that's a topic that we've talked about for years. And I think up until probably more recently, smart buildings, and lots of the buildings, like the building we're in, is smart, right? The blinds are controlled to reduce heating and cooling, energy and lighting and those kind of things, and that's great. But actually, all of these things have always been quite disjointed. And I think the other thing that's great is what is the ESG impact, the carbon impact per person. And I think when we think about now, and I mean we're going through a really exciting building program ourselves, right? So if we look at just what we are investing in just to run our business around actually, being able to know when people are in the office and be able to book time so you're not having those wasteful journeys in, because we're all consuming carbon if we're traveling, not to mention we're spending money on coffee and all the other things that we maybe don't want to spend time. So we've got to make we've all got to make the office a place we want to come and hit it right. So really great stuff. But then we got to join those things up and actually recognise that when the offices are quiet, so one of the organisations we work at the moment, generally nobody's in on a Friday, so actually they're able to shut down entire rooms, even down to all the meeting equipment and stuff in the room, so nothing is on when the room isn't going to be occupied, and be able to actually working with HR tools and planning tools and meeting booking tools to actually know when they're building, a bit like your Hive at home, right? You can set that to warm up when you're in, but not to heat the house up when you're away on holiday. And it's really great to see that technology coming across every single part of Cisco and joining that into full stack. And I think you're going to see so much innovation. I think as we move forward, we're going to see so much more innovation coming across those platforms.
Yeah, that's good. Which I suppose leads on to the one of the last main points, and the innovation and the challenges that we have in the industry at the moment is around skills. It doesn't need too much mention. Everyone is fully aware of the skills gaps that we've got in the industry today. Most, us included. It is hard to find really good, strong technical IT people. Across the full digital stacks.
And everyone's after the same resource.
Everyone's after the same resource. And it's an area which Cisco are putting a huge amount of focus on. I know others, Microsoft and others, are also doing similar sort of thing. But they have an aim to train 10 million people, which is a very bold aim to have. But 10 million people across EMEA, across digital and cybersecurity, to eliminate and make the skill shortage something of the past. So it is a huge goal to go for, but it's something that as us as a reseller, obviously fully behind, and we spend a lot of time training our own staff, but also it brings more back into the industry, and more trained people, more skills drives more innovation, which then maybe we can do more and more to drive things forward.
I think it also helps as well. I mean, certainly an area we've seen a lot of, and we're investing heavily in that space, right? And probably all after the same talent pool that all of you are after, which of course drives up costs, right? Because when things are in demand, they kind of cost more, right? Like energy. But the other point Cisco raised, I think, which was interesting and probably good for us, right? It is and other Cisco partners, is that there's a huge drive for Cisco to work better with partners, to deliver better pricing for their customers through programs, but also to drive more managed services. So Cisco see a massive uplift on organizations taking managed services through partner, because there is this big skill shortage, right? And you're either going to spend the money and build those people and then pay more money to try and retain them, because they're going to be probably nabbed up by partners, right, to try and build services out. And that's a really interesting space. So I think it'd be good to continue to watch. I think as the skills happen, I think salaries are through the roof, as we know. In certain areas, we're often the same resource. Training is great, but people have to have the time to train, and I think it's a good opportunity as well to think about, well, actually, do you continue to train, invest in those areas, or do you work with partner? And I think that's something we're seeing an increase in ourselves. And I think ourselves as a partner, there are aspects of technology that we choose to outsource, right, where it makes more sense. So wow, lots of stuff, right? We've just scratched the surface.
We have. I mean, we talked about predictive networks, application security, and IoT ops dashboards, and all the other things that Cisco were announcing there. I've just mentioned them, so that's good. But
there we go.
There was huge number of things that were talked about there, and they were the main ones that for us struck or resonated with us as being very key to both us as an organisation and what we take to you as our customers, but also what we see is also based on the conversations we have with customers as well.
Totally. And listen, for all of you listening, thank you for listening to us ramble on. It's the first one of these we've done actually in person. We normally sat at the end of a video call, pretending to look at each other. So this has been really good to do and bring us together. I think if you're a managed customer from Cisilion, you want to talk about any of these other areas, naturally reach out. If you're new, you don't know who we are, look us up on the web, or please do ping us. We're happy to have these conversations.
We're both on LinkedIn. You can find us there.
Absolutely. But thank you for joining. Thank you for listening to us ramble on, and enjoy the rest of your Thursday. Thank you very much.